Hey, board gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back in the Gumbo pot, this time taking a look at Knitting Circle, a brand new game hitting Kickstarter from our friends at Flatout Games. So let's get right to that table and see how this game plays. All right, Knitting Circle. We're back in the world of Calico, those beautiful, gorgeous, puzzly, mean cats that we had in the previous Flat Out. We've got that awesome artwork from Beth Sobel here on the front showing a sleeping cat and a big pile of yarn. And that's what the theme of this game is. We're going to be making some garments. These are the garments here. We're going to try to score some points. And just like in Calico, it's that multi-level of puzzles that you have to deal with. The game, I've got it set up. Evie and I just finished playing a game, but I kind of recreated what it looks like for this. And maybe I can even show you a turn or two so that you can get a semblance of how the game is played. But the overview of the game is that we've got all of these little yarn pieces here in the center, and that tracks the rounds of the game. We're going to play 6 rounds, denoted by how many pieces there are in the middle. And then we've got we each have our little cat token. I've set it up for a 2-player game, obviously with Evie over there and me over here. And on our turn, we're going to move 1 or 2 spaces that are available. And by available spaces, I mean they've got some little yarn things, and there's no cat there. And when you move that 1 or 2 spaces, you'll take one of those pieces and put them on the 4 slots in your player board from left to right. All right. Now, if you notice, when we set up these pieces, we've got the 6 in the middle. Well, we have 2 on each slot because we're playing a 2-player game, and they've got to match. The side has to match what that space is, and they go from the side that's kind of a pearly, I think it's called. But basically, what I look at it is it's smooth, or it's got the little V's. We've got the smooth side, and we've got the little nitty V sides, and it's going to be set out in accordance with what it shows in the basket here. And you'll have to take it that way, and you'll have to put it on your board that way. Now, the object of the game is to match those yarn pieces with the garments you're trying to make. As you can see, I've got 2 here that I worked on. I've got this sweater, this long sweater, and then I've got these socks. But the pattern on these socks and sweaters and scarves and long johns and mittens and hats shows that you have 2 different types of patterns. We've got either that smooth or the ones with the little V's. And when you're drafting and moving your pieces on there, they've got to match that. So that first part of the game is going to be getting those pieces, those 4 pieces on your board with the colors and patterns that you want to match. Because these guys that move onto your board, they can't be switched unless you discard a yarn token to the bag, and then you can flip over one of the pieces to the side you want. Now, you do have also a personal basket here. Anytime you get yarn tokens out of the bag and they come to your player board, they can go in any fashion you want. Some of the tokens, if you earn them, like this cat's paw, it actually lets you just pick whatever tile you want, on any side you want, any color, and you can put it in your little personal basket. Some of the other bonuses that you'll see on some of these cards, for instance, that little bonus right there, that just says you're going to grab one at random. Again, you're putting it in your personal basket, so it can be either side you want, but you're just grabbing it at random. All right, so now that we've got the board set up, we've got kind of the layout over 6 rounds. We're trying to fill up as many of these garments as we can to score points, and also looking at the bonus points on the bottoms if we can to try to score points. How do we do that? We're going to do it the first phase, drafting. All right, so we'll take our cats and we'll move them in turn order 4 times, moving 1 or 2 spaces and taking one of those pieces and moving it to our player board. When that's done, when both players are 3 or 4, because it goes from 1 to 4 players in this game, when all of that's done and we have all of our pieces, then we'll move to that second phase. And the second phase is going to be filling up these garments. Now, we're going to draft these randomly at the start, just fill these up randomly from the bag to put 2 on each, depending on the player count. But the first player does have a little tiny advantage. And that first player advantage is that if there's a tile that you particularly need, you can switch that from this little basket here, the round, because remember, that's the timer. There's 6 rounds. We're going to take 1 for each round. You can move it into one of these areas and discard the one that it replaces. So for instance, on this particular garment here, which I didn't finish, and I mean, I actually did finish with the mandatory part, but I didn't complete it. If I was trying to complete it, I need and I'm trying to do a pattern, blue, green, and then blue. I need a blue piece that's got the little V, the little knit style. And there is one in here in the middle. There's also one here, but let's just say that it looked like this, and I needed that piece to come to here. Well, since I'm the first player this round, I could have taken this and put it somewhere close to where my cat is. I'm the white player, so it'd be the white cat, and I could just put that there, discard that to the bag. That would be the first round. Of course, this is deeper into the game. But now, when we're ready to start, I just move that one space and take that piece here. And now I'm ready. Okay, so let's assume we finish that part. Both players, or all 3 or 4 players, have drafted all of their tiles. They've got all 4 tiles here. We're going to move to the second phase, and that is filling up our board. Okay, so the game, each player gets 2 of these knitting tokens. And to add pieces to a card, you need a knitting token and you need a card with space on it. Well, this one here is already full. The sweater is already full. This one I'm still working on with 1 more space. So since I have an extra knitting token and I have some tokens here in the bottom, let's just say that I had 3 or 4 other tokens here, just as by way of an example. Okay. Then, as long as I have a knitting token and a token to spend, I can grab one of these 6 garments and start working on it. Now, the one I'm going to grab has to match the token that I'm going to discard. So let's just say that I want to work on a hat. I can discard this pink one that matches the hat color, and the symbol also matches with the little star. Discard that to the bag, take the hat, set it right here, and denote that I'm working on it by putting my little knitting needles at the top. All right, so I've got my tokens, I've got my boards. How do I score it up? Well, this part here, how do I fill it up? This part here, we're going to do on our own. So the first part is drafting turn by turn. For the second phase of the game, we're kind of doing it, everybody does it at the same time. So I look at my pieces here, and what I'm trying to do in looking at this hat is I'm trying to get pieces from top to bottom that are going to match those patterns, and filling that up will complete the hat and score the points as far as I go. It's mandatory that I get all of these full, and then I would score 3 points if I did that. But notice that there's a little darker shade here. If I can get that piece in there before the end of the game, that would score me 6 points instead of 3. That's pretty important. Also, completing it gives me this little paw. The grubby paw gives me more. And you can see how you can chain those up here. You're adding things to get extra tiles, getting grubby paws to get extra tiles, and you can use them all at the minute you get them, so you can kind of chain it up to keep your turn going. But the other thing that I have to think about is, you notice on the player board, we've got buttons. And every good garment that you've knitted needs some buttons, right? These buttons determine additional scoring. If I can complete a pattern or with colors that matches this, that one of these buttons or the type of garment, then I can add that button to it, and that's going to score me even more points. If I complete a garment and it matches nothing on there, then unfortunately I made an ugly garment, the old ugly sweater joke, right? And that gives me this -3 cat, or the ugly knitting, and we don't want the frowny cat on there. So we're going to really try to get those patterns in, because scoring these things are going to be nice. You're going to get 6 points and all that. But what you're really looking for is trying to get these buttons. And you can put as many buttons from each of the types, the circles, the triangles, and the squares, on there as you qualify for. For instance, let's look at the 3 that we have now. This one here, I've actually got a pink and a blue that matches here. This is looking for a pink and a blue type of a garment. And I've got, let's see, I do not have stripes, but I do have color block, where I've got colors and then another color. And so I've got that here. So I've got a second button that I can apply to it. And then I don't have any sweaters here, but let's look over here on Evie's board. And had I used that, had I had this token, I've got the sweater. So a nice sweater, completing the sweater, this would have actually given me all three of these buttons at the end of the game, giving me an additional 7 points in addition to the 6 points I scored at the bottom. There's also another bonus though. If you look at the bottom, it says that at the end of the game, I'm going to get 3 points for every one of the scarves that I've completed. So maybe I'm going to try to focus on getting a bunch of scarves after completing the sweater so I can pile up the points, because it's just free points that we're getting. All right, let's move to the socks. Now the socks I have completed because I've got all the mandatory areas. I'm in the bonus range though. And boy, if I could move this over here, now I've gotten all of the thing filled. That gives me an extra tile at the bottom as my bonus, and also 6 points at the end. But does it match anything? Well, we've got a sock. I don't have a sock because I had given it up, but let's just say I hadn't done that. I'll keep that sock over here. The sock would match. I also have a pattern of stripes. A, B, A, B, A, B. Well, it turns out I have a token, the stripes token, on my board. So I've got 2 of them. And I also have a green and blue. But that's not what I did here. I did kind of that dark blue instead of the light blue. So unfortunately, it doesn't match the one that I did. So, you know, getting the buttons to match your garments is not an easy thing. That's the whole deal with the puzzle. But if I'd done that, I would have scored more points. But at least I got 2 buttons on here for an additional 3 points. So I'm doing well with my 2. And then I would start working on the hat. Now, again, we're going to do this at the end of the round. We're going to score up our buttons. I'm just showing you by example what I've done with these previous rounds. So on my hat part, I would have to think to myself, if whatever buttons I've had, I would probably try to draft these tiles or out of my little drafted area or out of my personal basket that would match whatever buttons I have here. At the end of each round, we're going to score up each one of these garments. And then we'll also refill from random spots here and the 3 baskets that we have with either, you know, a triangle one for the blocks, those color styles, or the types of colors on there, or the type of garment that we have. Like in this case, it's a scarf. Oh, that'd be perfect for if we were working with this. So 6 rounds of that. And at the end of those 6 rounds, we're going to discard any of the cards that we didn't complete. So for instance, if this was the end of the game, this one would not be this would not be completed. So I wouldn't score any points for that one. I do have the socks, and I would score 6 for this one, plus the 3 points, total of 9 points there. And on this one, I've got the whole thing, that's 6 points. Plus I've got 2, 4, 3. That's 7 plus the 6, that's 13 points for this one. I'd also get a bonus if I had completed any scarves. I didn't, but had I done that, I would have gotten 3 points per. And that's the end of the game in terms of the scoring. 6 rounds, easy drafting, and then simultaneous building of the garments, scoring up the garments with your buttons, refilling the buttons here from the random draw pile here, and then refilling your board each round with more of those tokens. We hand off the first player token to the next player, and that player will take one of these tokens in the middle to substitute to the outer ring, and denoting that we're getting closer to the end of the game. And that's kind of a big overview of how this game plays. Let me give you some of my thoughts about the game itself and what we thought about when we played it. Holy cow. So Calico was really puzzly, and in some ways, you know, it could be mean to you, right? If you looked at your pattern of pieces that you're trying to play in Calico, and you blocked yourself out into a corner or had areas where you know that piece is never going to come, it could be pretty frustrating. It was a great puzzle and a beautiful game. Knitting Circle does a good job of still being as puzzly. I mean, the multi-layer puzzles of not only trying to fill the garment with the alternating styles of knitting, and then matching those up to the 6 buttons that you have on your board and matching them back up to the completed ones that you have for the scoring there. That multi-layer of puzzles of trying to get the tokens to match the right orientation and the right colors and putting them in a certain, top to bottom. I mean, there's so many different levels to this puzzle that it's really challenging. At the same time, I was able to teach a preteen how to play the basics of the game. And so actually, Evelyn did very well on a couple of her boards. She got this green and yellow one completely maxed out. I was focusing on some different colors, and she was able to grab those tokens. And she even stole one of the green ones that I needed, which I thought was pretty cool. She kind of laughed about it. She's like, I know you need this one. So that's funny that even an 8-year-old could pick that up. So the rules from that standpoint are pretty intuitive. It's just the puzzles are, that kind of next level without being as harsh or mean. Is there some meanness to the game? Of course there is. If any kind of game that you have, that you're going to have some drafting where I know that the other player to my left or another player at the table is going to want a certain tile. And maybe it's not as good for me, but it does help. I might draft it. There's a little bit of that hay drafting in there and blocking out, with the different spots. But it's very, very light player interaction. This is, in essence, one of those games where you're working on your puzzle. You have to be careful and see what other people are doing, seeing what garments they could score up on, and maybe you want to try to get some of those colors to slow their engine down. But really, it's about you doing your own puzzles. That's the 3 things that I really liked about this, and that's what I want to talk about. The first one is I love the way the draft is. We've seen this style of draft before where you move pieces around and you grab it, but I like the way this does it. It's only a 1 or 2 space move, and the spaces that have a cat or don't have a tile for you to draft don't count. So it's pretty clear what your next move is going to be. You're just going to have 1 or 2 spaces to think about. So I like the fact that the draft is very snappy. It's like, okay, I need these colors. I'm going to grab these as round as best as I can. It's done in 4 turns, and then you're on to the next part. The second part I like is those multi-level puzzles that I talked about. It was a challenge to try to get the right colors into the first time I played it. Oh, I really botched it because I was just grabbing tiles and not thinking about what kind of buttons I really need to focus on. After that, I got a little better at it. It's like I really got to focus on these buttons and what colors they are and what patterns they're looking for, and grab those tiles that are going to match up to that. And number 3, what I really like is the fact that they didn't have to do this, but at the bottom of these different garments, there's all these different types of scoring or bonus points or bonus tiles. There's just a bunch of ways that you can kind of keep the engine going or flex your strategy so that you can get more points on that. So I thought that was a pretty clever touch, and I really enjoyed that. And there's also some Lagniappe. So that's the base game, and I've only played the base game, but there is an advanced variant, and it comes with a bunch of cards in here. And the cards are basically things that, it's kind of a race where there's a certain thing you want. Like, for instance, the perfect pair. The first person to build 2 mittens that are matching, they got to be the same color. They have to have the same length, and they got to have the same patterns. First person to do that will race to this card and get a free little cat's paw. And the cat's paw gives you gives you a tile, right? Then you flip over the card to the backside. And at the end of the game, you've set out a number of these cards. At the end of the game, everybody can still score these up. In other words, can still do the perfect pair. The first person to do it gets that bonus, but everybody is going to score those points. So that's a nice little lineup. Instead of just working on these private goals that you have from the different 6 garments, you're going to have these public goals with a little incentive to get to those, because if you do, you're getting more tiles that can help you keep that engine going and help you run it to score more points. So don't forget about that Lagniappe. That's going to come with this game, those extra scoring cards that kind of create a sense of urgency and a race to complete those matching goals for that. All right, so that's Knitting Circle from our friends at Flatout. This is going to go on Kickstarter. Should be coming up pretty soon, and it's going to be the game itself, along with all these beautiful artwork and tiles. and that little Lagniappe with those cards. Flatout Games has a track record with a number of games like Cascadia there and Calico, puzzle games that deliver pretty quickly. This was a free preview copy that they sent to us. This is not a review because we haven't played it enough and we haven't played the advanced game and we're not paid for any of this. This is just my first impressions after playing a couple of times to see how the game was. And hopefully that gives you an idea of whether or not you should look at the project. Until next time, les bon temps roulés.